So,
Indeed.
Dave Hodrien, we're now talking about some new thing. The whole point about the talk with Ben yesterday is that Benjamin and Fulford has put a new column in his website, which is surprisingly called benjaminfulford.net or something. And it's information about UFOs, classic UFO cases. It's only started like a week ago. And he's claiming this particular group who are running it are getting their information from the Space Force. So this is important. It's a new source of information. And in the same week, Dave, you are going to be talking about something about pilots. So tell us all about this situation. You should be able to share screen, hopefully.
Absolutely. Should I try sharing my screen?
Yeah. That works. Great. Perfect. Okay, that's great. And just for your reference, if necessary, I can add, if there's something really detailed, I can add this in the edit. So, sure. Dave, this is really important. It's great to have you back at Bases. This is on Bases News, and this is a feature we run if we can on information about going on. So take it away, Dave.
Absolutely, yeah. So what I wanted to talk with you about today, Miles, and all your listeners, is the launch of a brand new website called UK Pilots. Let's actually spell one. Reporting UAP. It's the name of the site. We'll get to that. I'll start with a bit of background information. Maybe some of your viewers won't have seen anything by me before. So just as a brief background, I am the chairman and lead investigator for Birmingham UFO Group. As part of that group, I've been actively investigating UFOs since early 2008. And have documented hundreds of sighting reports and contact cases around the globe, many of which get written up as very detailed case reports that end up on our group's website. I've also been writing for UFO Truth magazine since 2013. It's a bi-monthly e-zine. And all the writers for UFO Truth magazine believe in the existence of non-human intelligences. They believe there's a real component to the UFO subject, which is of non-human origin. So that's kind of what sets it apart from some of the other magazines that are out there. And I've been writing for them for many years. I'm also the United Kingdom Deputy Representative for ISA. That's the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. ISA is essentially a multinational organization with 30 countries around the globe, and each country has a main representative and then a deputy. And I'm the UK deputy. The essential idea of the group is to kind of raise the awareness of the reality of the subject with the wider public. And we do that through education programs, releasing presentations, and also working with various agencies to try and get information out there. Lastly, I've also released my own card game, believe it or not, themed on the UFO subject called UFO Wave. I released it via Kickstarter, the crowdfunding website, a number of years ago, and it's been commercially released and is currently available through the Buford website. There's a section in there where you can order it. So the cartoon artwork for the game has been done by a genuine experiencer from New York, who I reached out specially because I liked his art style, and he's actually had experiences himself. And it is the most authentic portrayal of the UFO subject ever seen in a tabletop game. I can take that statement to the bank. So yeah, moving on, let's have a look at the UK Pilots Reporting UAP website. As you can see, our tagline: the trusted source for UK pilot UAP sightings. So it's all a bit exciting, eh? Here's our opening statement that goes with the site. This is at the top of the site when you first go there. I'm just going to read this out word for word. We provide accurate and reliable information on unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, sightings reported by UK pilots. Our mission is to analyze and share credible data to increase public awareness and understanding of these aerial occurrences. UAP encounters present clear air safety implications for pilots, whether military or civil, and coordinated lines of reporting are necessary to ensure best practice and transparency. There's a lot more to the site besides just that, which I'll go through with you. So the site is being administered by myself and 3 other admins, other UK and Irish researchers. and I'll briefly go over who's running the group. So Gary Heseltine is the key admin of and the initial designer of the site. He's been a UFO investigator for many years, and a lot of your listeners are going to be very familiar with Gary, of course. He's a former RAF police and British Transport Police officer. And many years ago, he was the creator of Proophos, that's the police reporting UFO sightings website or online database. And that's now got hundreds of sightings in there by active and retired police officers that have come forward with that information and added it out there. And it's definitely worth checking out if you've got an interest in the subject. And he released that in 2002. Since 2013, he's been the editor of UFO Truth magazine. And also since 2021, the vice president of ISA, which I've already mentioned. Next, we've got Alan Foster, a Welsh experienced researcher and lecturer. He's many years of active research, far more than myself. He's also got 19 years managing airlines travel operations, both commercial and military. And he speaks regularly at groups, universities, and conferences around the country on the reality of the subject. Lastly, we've got Chris Gaffney. He's a UFO investigator from South Island and many years experience again since the mid-1970s. He's part of the Irish UFO Research Centre and has a keen interest in aviation. He's also a private pilot himself. He's the founder of NHI Disclosure and is essentially trying to work with Irish government and institutions to essentially bring information on the UFO UAP subject to light. And he's also the deputy representative for Ireland with ISA again. So those are the admins of the site alongside myself. So let's have a look at some further information regarding what the new site contains. So we've got a number of different aims where we're going with this. So first of all, I want to assure everybody listening, this is absolutely not for profit. It's not for any kind of form of fame or fortune or anything like that. Myself and the other admins of the site are very passionate about getting the real subject out there into the public domain as much as possible, and sharing information on these incredible experiences that are going on. So we want to openly share that information regarding UAP/UFO incidents occurring within the UK or witnessed by UK-based pilots elsewhere in the world. So let's say a UK pilot is across flying over the States and they see something, we would still include that. We want to persuade pilots and other aviation staffs, and not just pilots. I know our initial statement just mentioned pilots, but essentially anybody in the aviation industry to come forward with information. These individuals may have never gone on the record before. I want to assure them, any of them listening who get past this information, their confidentiality and privacy is of absolute paramount importance to us. And we will not release personal details like their name or their ID number or anything like that unless given permission directly by them. So some of the cases that we release may have some of the information kept back. So we absolutely respect their confidentiality because we understand the nature of the subject, especially in their line of work. And in time, we hope that this website becomes one of the leading trusted places to go for UK aviation-related UFO cases. This is the whole ethos of the site itself. So let's have a quick look at the name, the reasoning for the name. So I know the terminology UAP grates with people. I've spoken to people over the years who really don't like that term. So UFO is still the most recognized terminology within the UFO community today. Absolutely. For example, the name of my group is Birmingham UFO Group. I've not changed it to BUAPG Group. Wouldn't really roll off the tongue. However, the term UAP in recent years has become established. It's been used by various agencies, both in the States and elsewhere. And a lot of the scientific community and that do refer to the subject as UAP now instead of UFOs. Now, that's largely been done to reduce the stigma of the subject and kind of normalize it and bring it back to something worth discussing on a serious level. and I want to kind of avoid all the little green men and that cookie stuff. Yeah, we do want this site to be taken seriously, both by the witnesses who get in touch with us and any governmental or scientific institutions who are interested in what we're attempting to do with this. And that's the reason why we've used the term UAP in the title. I just want to put it out there, but I've got absolutely no problem with using the terminology UFO still, and I will continue to do so. So the locality reasoning, why are we just going with the UK? So myself and the other admins absolutely aware that UFO sightings are going on all the time. It's a global phenomenon, absolutely. And I've investigated many cases from all around the world, as have the other researchers working on the website. But since 2017, the news has been inundated with what's going on across in the United States, with the Pentagon emissions back in 2017 that got released, the New York Times article, and everything that's happened since with their changes to laws and witnesses, aerial witnesses coming forward to talk about some incredible incidents that have taken place across there. However, as I said, this is a global phenomenon. But the Ministry of Defence in this country are far more tight-lipped regarding what's taking place on UK waters. Now, it stands to reason that if there's all these experiences going on across in the States, they're also going on in other countries too. And that makes it very, very interesting. What is going on, especially what's going on with pilots and other places like down on the ground from airports and military bases. And we felt it was time there was a website dedicated to that, dedicated solely to the UK. There are countless websites available right now on the internet, including Birmingham UFO Group's own website, where people can read about worldwide sightings, and that differentiation, that specificness does not exist. But that's the reason why we wanted to do this. And we entirely welcome other countries to do something similar along their lines, like maybe somebody in France would like to do a French version of what we're doing with this, and they're more than welcome to. Lastly, we've got the types of witnesses that we're covering by this. So again, as I said, there's countless websites out there that cover all sightings, and most sightings are taking place from everyday civilians, just people down on the ground. And I talk with I talk with regular civilians all the time about incredible sightings and contact experiences that they are having. However, there's a number of things that set the aviation industry with of particular interest to us. So first of all, pilots and aviation personnel, they're very, very good witnesses generally. And that's because they're experienced in seeing things both up in the air and from the ground at airports and that. In different weather conditions, different distances, etc. They're much more likely to recognize, say, a balloon, a weather balloon, or something like that, something mundane that's up there in the sky. So that kind of, it gives an extra level to their testimony when they come forward with information, especially if they think it's something unusual that they haven't seen before. These particular witnesses in the aviation industry, they may also feel pressurized into withholding that information that may have come officially from their superiors or whatever, or they just might be frightened about losing their job if they talk about such things. And as I said before, confidentiality is assured with any information that comes forward. Now, of course, we will have to do some background checks. Myself and the other admins would look into the background of the individual reaching out to us to ensure that they genuinely are who they say they are. But that information will not be shared any further and will never go out publicly unless they give us express permission, okay? It's also an absolute fact that UFOs represent a clear air safety concern. These things are out there flying around, and a mid-air collision with one is and continues to be a very real possibility. There's a number of cases in the past where it seems that a mid-air collision with such an object may have actually taken place. They're kind of few and far between, and a lot of the time the objects move intelligently and zip away, and that doesn't happen. But that's not to say that it couldn't happen again. So the greater understanding of this within the aviation community, the reality of what's going on out there, the better. And that's another reason for why we've decided to focus in on this this subsection of witnesses. So there's an overview of what we're doing with the website, and I hope that makes sense to all the listeners. And we'll get back to that in a bit. I figured it'd be very interesting to go over a few aerial cases now as part of this discussion. And I wanted to start with an absolutely incredible historical event. that took place at RAF Little Risington in Gloucestershire. Right back in 1952. Now, our website has a number of historical UK-based cases on it, and this is one of the ones that we've covered, but I'll go over the details. And there's many other cases on there as well, some of which have been investigated by Alan Foster himself and Gary as well. Yeah, let's have a look at what happened with Little Risington. Some of you may be familiar with this case before, who may have read about it online or whatever. If this is new to you, it's a pretty impressive case. So it occurred on the 21st of October 1952, and it took place near this location, RAF Little Risington. It's still an active RAF base today, and that's a modern photograph of it from the air. And it involved this man, Mike Sweeney, and he was on a training exercise with David Cross. He was taking him up into the air just for flying experience, another lieutenant, and they both took off from the base just to perform some manoeuvres in the local vicinity of the RAF base. And that was the type of aircraft they were up in at the time, a Gloucester Meteor Mk7. Obviously, lots of different versions of it. This is the Mark 7 fighter jet, and so they both took off. There were no other jets in the vicinity of where this incident took place at the time. So they got to about 13 to 14,000 feet up, so they were kind of essentially ascending away from base and passed through some clouds. And all of a sudden, right in front of them, smack bang through the cockpit window, they saw these three white circular objects. Now, almost instinctively, Mike thought that they were parachute canopies. As in, initially, his initial thought was these are three parachutes coming down. But he soon realized that, first of all, they were completely circular. There was nobody hanging underneath them, no wires or anything like that. And also appeared to be dead still in the air. And of course, he's a recognized pilot with hundreds of hours flying experience, yeah, so he would know what he was looking at, and he would know if the objects were slowly descending and that sort of thing. He said they were dead still. So he alerts Cross to the presence of these objects, and Cross essentially confirms that he can also see them. So it wasn't like just a hallucination that one of the pilots was getting. There was quite obviously something that was absolutely there. The objects then began to quickly ascend. And they were very interested in what these things were, especially as they started going up instead of coming down to the ground. So Sweeney decides he's going to give chase, and he starts ascending up, following these objects. And he follows them right up to 30,000 feet. So obviously quite a distance, essentially. And at this point, when he was seeing them from a different angle, he could see that they were essentially flattened discs, white color, but he described them as plate-like. So we're talking about round, essentially round flattened discs. Now, they were across to the left side, the port side of the aircraft at this point, at 30,000 feet, and just there. But all of a sudden, the objects just move across to the other side of the plane, obviously performing an intelligent maneuver. A short time after that, the objects suddenly speed away out of view, and this happens extremely fast. So Sweeney takes his eye off them for a few seconds, and when he looks back, they're no longer there, inexplicable. He said it's hard to gauge the size of the objects accurately, probably because of the lack of kind of detailed structure on them, but they did not appear to be kind of small things like balloons. Now, he contacts the RAF base, and he is informed from RAF Staverton, another local RAF base, that they got radar detection of these objects, and they told them that they were heading east at appeared to be 600 knots. At this point, they actually launched two other jets from the base, Meteor Mark 8s. They were launched to actually attempt to intercept these objects, but they never managed to get close to them because it wasn't long after that the objects just essentially vanished at a much, much faster rate of speed, which we'll get back to. So they're just up there, they've seen strange objects, and he reports it to air traffic control at RAF Sopley. So the air traffic control is based at another nearby RAF base. And he's abruptly told to return to Little Risington. So they're just essentially just say, come straight back to base. After landing, the two pilots, they get separated off from each other. And Cross was ordered to go to his room on the base and not speak to anybody about what he'd seen. And he remained in his room overnight, completely overnight. I believe he was given some food and drink, but nobody came and interviewed him until the following day. So 9 a.m. the next morning, he's asked to go to the wing commander's office, and at that point, he sees Sweeney there as well. Crawford, he claimed that he was informed by a man in plain clothes that the objects have been detected on numerous radars. He was asked to draw the objects there in the room. That we don't have access to that drawing anymore. It was never found. He later on in his flight logbook also drew the same objects. The operational book at Little Risenton, which we have got a historic record of, that noted the incident, including the description of these objects and the description of the maneuvers that they performed. However, the Air Ministry discounted them as being extraterrestrial or advanced craft of some kind. But here's the important thing: they could not provide any other valid explanation for what had occurred. So years later, Sweeney was interested to see this report that had been made on this incident, and he was told at that point that it had been routinely destroyed. They said that after 5 years, they get rid of just routinely destroy the paperwork, and they said, sorry, we don't have it anymore. Now, years after that, he actually rose to quite a high rank, Air Commodore, and that gave him extra capabilities to go looking for information. And again, he asked for the report. At this point, they give him the file. So the file's never been publicly released, but he said that the file did exist, and he was only given it when he got to a sufficient rank. And this proved that they'd essentially not followed that standard protocol with this case. So most stuff they probably were disposing of after 5 years. But with this case, they kept that file and they'd kept it hidden, and then had told him and essentially lied to him before, saying that they disposed it. So that shows that there was something very, very interesting with what had happened here, because why else would they want to keep that information when they're disposing most of their records? RF Southern Sector apparently detected the objects from a different radar entering their airspace at 3,000 miles per hour, absolutely putting any mundane explanation out of the question. The objects were also tracked at RAF Rudloe Manor. So we're talking about separate bases here with separate radar systems. So the idea that the radar system is malfunctioning or something like that can be discounted in this case, yeah. Now, they said that the objects had taken off and left their airspace at 1,000 miles an hour. So again, an incredibly fast maneuver, way too fast for it to be anything mundane or another commercial aircraft or anything like that. So because of that, because of these maneuvers, these obvious intelligent maneuvers performed at incredible rates of speed, and the fact that it was reported by multiple pilots and put down on record, it makes it an absolutely stunning historical case. And it's gone down in history as one of the most impressive multi-witness aerial cases that's ever occurred within the UK. And this is one of the reasons why we've covered this case on our website. And there is a number of other ones on there that I'm not going to go through right now. So yeah, do go out and check out the sites if you want to see those other historical cases. So I figured it'd be interesting just to give you a bit of background about cases that I personally have investigated over the years. So obviously, in 16 years of active investigation, I've dealt with hundreds of cases, and a number of those cases have been from people with either a military or an aviation background, which is one of the reasons I feel I'm a good admin or researcher to get involved with this particular project. What I'm going to go over with you here is not actually a UK-based pilot, but it's an absolutely incredible case. And it's an incident which, to my knowledge and to the knowledge of the witness, is still classified. It's the only case I've ever investigated over the years involving a supposedly classified incident. It occurred in 1989 on the east coast of Greece. And the witness who came forward was a gentleman who came forward in April 21 to me. Just got in touch via Facebook privately. He claimed to be a retired aircraft mechanic who worked for the Greek Air Force. This is the logo of his particular part of the Air Force he was part of. And it obviously took a while to gain his trust. He did not want any of his personal details, like his name or anything, going out. Yeah, so it took him a while to gain my trust, but after that, then it went the other way, and I had to confirm that he was who he said he was, because obviously it could have been somebody random just saying that they worked for the Air Force. To prove his background to me, he passed me photographs of his uniform with his name tag on, which I've seen. He did not allow me to release those publicly, so they are not. I'm not going to show you them here, and they're not in the case report that I wrote up on this incident either. What he did allow me to show is this. This is 2 censored images of him actually at the airbase. So he sent me them uncensored and asked me to black out his face on these pictures. This is him on the actual airbase. I can't mention the exact name of the base. That was one of the pieces of information he wasn't willing to allow me to disclose. So the incident occurred some point in July 1989. He doesn't know the exact night it occurred on, but he knows roughly when it occurred. And as I said, it's a large airbase on the east coast of Greece. And at the time, he was part of a squadron, a 12-man squadron made up of 4 pilots, there's 4 aircraft mechanics, and 4 weapons experts, weapons handlers, making up that squadron. And there were numerous squadrons on the base at that point. His particular squadron at that time was involved in a training exercise where they would essentially be on standby, and they would simulate an attack from a foreign aerial force, and they would have to essentially get the jets ready and launch them up as fast as possible, and they'd document how long that all took and that sort of thing. So they were sitting there waiting for an alarm for this training exercise, but obviously most nights nothing would happen at all. So they spent their nights sitting in a building that was situated at the western end of the main strip of the airbase, and off to the east was the coast, so it's quite close to the coastline. And they were just in there, and they'd sit there chatting away through the night. He said it was pretty boring most of the time, and then when their shift ended, they'd just leave and there'd be a shift change. So they'd be on alert, and as I said, if the alarms went off, they'd have to get airborne as soon as possible, but most of the time not a lot would happen. And at the time, it was the early hours of the morning, and he was sitting inside the building with the rest of his squadron. It got to about 12:40 a.m. and he did a shift change with one of the other mechanics. So one of the mechanics had been out with the jets outside on the run at the end of the runway, and he'd been inside, and they swapped places essentially. So he went better. So he was then got outside. It was a very, very clear night. He said it was very pleasant indeed. Some stars visible, that sort of thing. And he just got outside and just stretched and just kind of leant backwards and just happened to glance right along the airbase. And this was where he noticed these lights in the sky, seemingly over the runway. It was 3 red lights in a triangular formation. This is a sketch that he did explaining what it looked like, essentially. So, yeah, there were these 3 lights, and they were just there, and they were dead still in the sky, hovering above the base. Seemed to be about halfway along the runway. Now, obviously, with his background, I'd expect him to have be a good judge of distances, heights, etc. So I certainly believe that 500 meters away would have put it smack bang right over the middle of the base. And it was about 300 to 500 meters altitude, and he was looking up at it at a diagonal into the air. He estimated that this object, if it was at the distance he expected it to be at, was between 90 to 115 feet across. And he said it seemed to be a solid object. They couldn't really see the main body of the object because it was after dark, yeah. But the position of the lights and the fact that they weren't really changing, absolutely convinced that it was a singular object rather than 3 small objects in formation. There was absolutely no sound audible coming from the thing, appeared to be completely silent. So, of course, he calls out the rest of the squadron. It's like, what is this? He calls everybody outside to come and have a look. So they all step out onto the end of the runway, and they're all staring at this thing, chatting amongst themselves about what it could be. They decide to remain at their position instead of attempting to get closer by beginning to walk along the runway, probably because, as I said, they're on alert, they're on their shift. Now, this object remains in place for approximately 10 minutes, and it's just dead still in the sky. But all of a sudden, without any warning whatsoever, the thing just goes. He said it was like a bullet. So we're talking about instant acceleration, just massively fast, shot away to the east, out of sight. And they all immediately realized this was something very, very unusual indeed. Now, at this point, they expected the alarms to go off to sound, but there was nothing. No alarms, nothing. So they expected to get airborne, maybe have to intercept whatever this thing was or attempt to. But there was no alarms went off. So they go back inside the building and continue their shift, obviously talking for a number of hours about what this thing could have been. And early hours of the morning, their shift comes to an end, and they go back to their barracks to sleep for a number of hours, and they change over with another squadron. Later on the following day, they're all called to their officers' quarters, essentially, and they all head down there to the officers. And first of all, what they told them was that they said that they were aware that they'd seen something the previous night. And what they were told is that it was this. They said that it was a test of something like a Boeing E-3 Sentry. In other words, an AWACS plane, which ironically has a flying saucer-shaped radar slapped to the top of it. But they were obviously not impressed by that explanation at all, and rightly so, because these planes, they cannot hover motionless without making any sound. They cannot suddenly shoot off at hundreds and hundreds of miles an hour with instant acceleration. They have different lighting on. There's many, many different reasons for why it was obviously not this. And they all knew it as well. His entire squadron knew that it wasn't this at all. But they were told that this is what they'd seen. They were then told not to talk about it with their friends or family at all. And to the gentleman's knowledge, the incident has been classified ever since. So later on, he informed me that he spoke with somebody else on the base about it, a radar operator on the base. And he knew somebody who was part of that team on the base, and they confirmed that the object had not been picked up on radar. So whatever it was, this thing that was able to hover motionless for 10 minutes and then zip away extremely fast, it was quite clearly blocking radar or whatever, doing some kind of stealth type technology. So a truly stunning case, and I can absolutely vouch for the background of this individual. I checked that, and I was absolutely sure that he was who he said he was, and I believe it's absolutely a real incident. So that's that. I figured that was a pretty interesting case to share with you all, even though it doesn't involve somebody who was born or grew up in the UK. It's still an absolutely fascinating incident. But let's talk about a case that involving somebody who did grow up in the UK. A gentleman who was born and grew up in Nottingham. At the age of 10, he actually moved across to the States, which is why it says Upper Michigan. And as you can see, it's the year before 1988 now, year before the incident I just discussed with you. This incident occurred at an American Air Force base, and it involves a contact experience. Now, when I went through the site, I was very much focusing on UFO sightings seen by pilots and aviation staff here. But we are more than happy to speak with people who've had contact type experiences as well. I'm very, very experienced in speaking with contactees, abductees, whatever you want to call them, and have done for many, many years. So if any pilots or aviation staff have had that sort of experience, maybe not even involving a sighting of any kind of craft, we're still very, very interested to hear from you. I just wanted to put that out there. This particular individual, he's had numerous contact experiences since childhood, and I went through many of them with him and documented them, and they're available to go into in depth. I'm going to go through one of his particular experiences, the experience that occurred on this American Air Force base. So as I said, at the age of 10, 1978 this was, he moved across to the States with his mother. And in 1983, he had a big interest in joining the military. And once he'd finished university, he joined the military in 1985. Several years later, he was stationed at this base, K.I. Sawyer Base in Upper Michigan. The base is no longer an active base, but that's a modern map of how it now looks. You can see all the runways and everything's still there. And he was an aircraft maintenance specialist, so somewhat similar to the gentleman from Greece. He slept in barracks at the northern end of the base. This is the block of barracks that he was sleeping in at the time, just marked there, it's kind of zoomed in a bit. Now, because of his rank, he was allowed his own room when he first joined the base. He said he was sharing a dormitory with other troops, but after a while, he rose up the ranks and then was given his own room. And sometimes he'd invite his girlfriend over to stop over at the base. This is the same block view from ground level, and that there is the window to his actual room there that he pointed out to me. So he'd sometimes invite his girlfriend over, and she'd sleep over at the base. He said his room was about 12 feet across, and it had quite a low 7-foot sort of ceiling. He didn't have any photographs of what the room actually looked like. But one of the nights when his girlfriend was stopping over, he was awoken in the early hours of the morning. He didn't know the exact time. He thinks around 2 a.m. maybe. And he was woken from sleep with his girlfriend tapping him and exclaiming, "What's that? What's that?" Yeah. So he opens his eyes and he looks across the room, and what he saw shocked him. Essentially, what he described seeing was a blue glowing humanoid figure, seemed to be enclothed. He said the upper half of it was more visible than the lower half. The lower half kind of sort of faded in a bit. And he said it had quite a slender frame, appeared to have no genitalia. It was about 5 feet in height. So there's a lot of aspects there linking it with certain types or species of beings reported in contact cases. It had some kind of object in his left hand. You can see there on the drawing he did of it, this quick sketch he did of it. He's drawn it there. He didn't really see clearly what this was, but it was holding something in his left hand. So this being was just standing there in this glowing light across the room from him. And it obviously his girlfriend was quite upset about this fact. She was shaking in fear, asking him again and again, "What is that? What is that?" But now at this point, he acted really complacent to its presence. Now, we don't know why, but I've dealt with lots of contact cases over the years where this is a repeated aspect. So the individual undergoing the experiences can sometimes act like it's an everyday occurrence, like it's something completely normal. Now, it's possible that he had previous experiences which have been blocked out that he didn't really truly remember. And maybe to him, the being itself was very familiar and there was that kind of recognition. We don't know. All he knows is he was quite complacent to the fact that this blue glowing being was in the room, and he told his girlfriend to shut up so he could go back to sleep, and he tries settling back down to sleep. At this point, so he rolls over and he's still awake at that point. He feels his girlfriend get up off the bed and walk towards this being, obviously intrigued by what it was. He then said there was this bright flash that went through his eyelids, and she was blasted back on alongside him onto the bed, some kind of electrical discharge or something. We don't really know, but she was absolutely terrified by this, of course. But he asks her, "What are you doing?" Because he feels a thud back onto the bed and asks, "What are you doing?" And she essentially says, "Take me home now." She was very, very, of course, deeply upset by what was going on, and she wanted to get out of there. But he ignored that request, and he then remembers falling back off to sleep, leaving her in this kind of panicked state, awake on the bed next to him. So, not the best, of course. He wakes up in the morning and found her still sitting on the bed, still awake. So she'd been awake all the way through the night, had not dropped back off to sleep. The being was no longer there. He never really found out of her how it had dispersed. We can only assume it was there a while and then it kind of faded away or something. It didn't interact with her any further to his knowledge. But she was really, really upset. She was very traumatized by what had happened, and she thought that it was something to do with him. And what she said, "Are you into some kind of voodoo or craziness?" So she thought that he'd manifested this being and it was something to do with him that he'd personally done. Now he just essentially said absolutely not, and she said, I want to be taken home straight away. He couldn't explain what had occurred with that being. To his knowledge, he'd never seen it before, but unfortunately, like, this led to them breaking up as a couple because she sort of blamed him in a way for it. And didn't want anything more to do with him. There's some extra parts to this story which I won't go into now, but it's in the case report, a kind of side element to it, but it's quite detailed, so it's worth checking out. But yeah, I mean, in hearing the description of that being, I have dealt with a number of other cases over the years where people have seen these glowing entities. Sometimes they've got no facial features and it just seems like a glowing shape, somewhat humanoid shape. Other times they've got features and can look like some of the recognized types, such as the greys, which I'm sure your listeners will have heard of before. There's also a kind of reminiscent elements here with the character known as Dr. Manhattan as the graphic novel, the famous graphic novel Watchmen, which was also turned into a movie a number of years ago. Now, Dr. Manhattan, obviously blue, glowing, naked humanoid. There are differences now in speaking with the witness in depth. He absolutely acknowledged the fact that some of the elements did match his character. I've got no doubt whatsoever that it's not a fabricated case. I went into great depth with him over many hours about his experience. I do not believe that he'd taken the idea of Dr. Manhattan and turned that into some sort of contact experience. But there's just these interesting elements there. I just wanted to point that out in case any listeners are like, oh, he just come up with the idea of being Dr. Manhattan and that sort of thing. He'd taken inspiration from seeing that film or something like that. So I absolutely believe it was a real case, and that occurred on an actual Air Force base while he was on active service. So again, it's an experience, but one of a very different kind to the other cases we've gone over. So back to the website, I'd like to kind of wrap up by once again asking any pilots or aviation staff out there who are listening to this, do come forward in strictest confidence. The website is now live. It's at www.ukpilotsreportinguap.co.uk. You can go on there and check out that information. There's details about the admins. There's a number of really incredible historical cases, such as the Little Rissington event we went over. And the success of the website, the success of this project, it's essentially down to the witnesses. If nobody comes forward with any information, it will just remain as it is. It's just a website and it's just on there. So we do need people to come forward. So if you're a member of the public who's got an interest in what's going on in UK aviation with the UFO subject, of course, go and regularly check out the website to see if anything's been added. If you're an individual who's not part of the aviation industry but knows somebody who is, do pass this on to them, whether you feel that they've had experiences or not, especially if they've had experiences. But if you don't know whether they have or not, by all means send it to them, and then they can kind of pass it on to people inside their industry. And also, if you're listening to this and you are actually a pilot, or by all means get in touch. It will be treated in strictest confidence. You have my absolute word on that. We want the website to become trusted because it's being managed by myself and other researchers who've got a genuine interest in the reality of this subject. It has no affiliations with any government agencies or anything like that. So there's no danger of disinformation. Our only goal is sharing the information with the wider public in an edited way if necessary, but getting those details out there. So do get in touch. That's essentially it. Thanks for your time, and I hope you found this little overview interesting. Dave Hodrien.
Okay, if you it's fascinating. Are you able to stop sharing, and then we'll?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and by all means, I'll ask if you want to ask me any questions, Miles.
Well, I think this is very important. I think the obvious question. I've got two questions here. The obvious question is why now, and the other obvious question is that the confidentiality agreements with United States organizations has been betrayed directly to the media, and on a number of occasions.
Yes.
I mean, I was talking to some of the people involved with the Edgar Mitchell group.
Yeah.
And they actually heavily criticized certain organizations over there. Yes. Where media were able to sift through the files, and the confidentiality was broken. Yeah. And then the next thing they see, they're being ridiculed on a certain popular TV shows. I mean, obviously you're giving this assurance now, but that's a big hurdle. I think you might find.
It absolutely is, and we fully understand that. However, I'm sure that you can vouch for myself and the other admins and many other people within the community will do so. Now, of course, the pilots and aviation staff reaching out to us who do come forward, they may not know of any of us yet, and it might take a while to gain their trust, just as I did with the gentleman from Greece. And I had detailed discussions with him over a number of days, showing him my background and what I'd done with the site and that sort of thing, before he was happy to come forward with his name and share that to me. And at that point, it became about his background. Now, that speaks for itself, yeah. His details have not been shared by me to anybody, have not gone out in the report. I am the only person that knows his actual name, and I will absolutely never share that with anybody, because
I do absolutely think you should store any of that information on a non-networked computer.
I'm not going to store that information. It's just up there at the moment. It doesn't
because they're accessible by definition by certain no such agencies, etc.
Absolutely. You know, within a network that could be hacked. His name is not written in. Name is not written in this computer that I'm talking to you on now.
I'm talking about our friends down at GCHQ and things like that.
Yeah. So even if anybody was going to hack my computer, they wouldn't find that information.
Yeah. The other thing is, why now? What do you feel has changed that would allow pilots or aviation people to actually talk? Because they have been ridiculed in the past. I mean, there have been some very good cases which were released and have been on various media and TV shows and things. But what sense of why do you want to start this now? What has changed?
What's changed?
Or has anything changed?
Yeah, everything's changed since 2017. Now,
what happened in 2017?
So this is where the Pentagon acknowledged the research group behind the scenes looking into the UFO subject for a number of years. So they'd been actively investigating the subject behind the scenes. Now, up until that point, we thought that back in the 50s, they claimed to have stopped looking into things with Project Blue Book, and since then...
When did Project Blue Book, remind people who haven't a clue, when did Project Blue Book officially wind up? And then you had the Condon report, I think, as well.
Yeah, I believe it was about sort of 1960, if I remember, 1960, 62.
I mean, we're talking a long time ago.
Yeah, decades ago, yeah. So, and since then, there's been no acknowledgement of them actually having an active interest in the subject.
And we're digging into the ancient past here. You're talking about Stanton Friedman and also the late astronomer Alan Hynek, who was actually portrayed. He actually starred in the movie Close Encounters.
Yes,
he didn't star; he had a walk-on part, a cameo role.
Yeah, he was there.
I mean that's and also with ICER, you have Eamon Ansbur, who's an astronomer in Ireland, and I mean we do have astronomers, on the edges here. Well, not on the edges. Eamon's done a heck of a lot of work on this subject.
Oh yeah, and there's many others like him, scientists and academics who are starting to come to the realization that there's genuinely something with this subject.
I mean, I do think that the reason why the UAP, I have to tell you that during the course of this, I've had multiple stops of my recordings, and I've got 3 recorders here, and 2 of them be flashing lights and stopping, and if I had to take one hard drive out, that's on me. But you, Dave, nothing's gone wrong with that so far. But it's interesting that
fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So I think it's been in the media. It's been all over the media. Now,
well, the point is, for the last 45, 50, 60, 70 years, there's been one psyop to absolutely put the jammers on everything, completely stop everything, ridicule UFOs.
Oh, yeah,
and the UFO people have not really progressed since, 19 whatever.
It's an organised thing. We've got released documents, stateside documents, that prove conclusively, that they were out to ridicule the UFO subject and dismiss it and push that information out to the general
Donald
public.
Kehoe, who wrote the book, I think UFOs Are Real. Donald Kehoe wrote one of the first books. He was a German intelligence asset to make sure none of this stuff was going to get out without their control.
Yes, indeed.
So what do you think about, the CIA insistence that no other UFO research is permissible, and doing so is against the United States CIA interests.
So with the subject, yeah, they've always had an interest in it behind the scenes, yeah.
Yeah, well, they've stated this in public in the recent hearings about a year and a half ago.
They have now, but they're talking about something recent. They're not admitting anything between sort of 1960 to 2009, yeah. But these things have been going on, yeah. They've got a continuous interest in this, yeah. Definitely within the USA government, but also elsewhere in the world.
This is very serious, because if independent UFO researchers are going to be held accountable and considered a threat to national security by the CIA, in their words at the hearings in Washington,
yes,
what do you not think? What do you feel that somebody very politely, obviously, or maybe not so politely, will have a wee trip up from GCHQ and knock on your door to say, we don't like this? Or would Saint Nicholas, the Pope, have a different view of that? I'm obviously poking fun at Nick Pope.
I think, well, that hasn't happened yet. You know, I mentioned that I mentioned that case from Greece, yeah, that's still classified, yeah. I've not had any kind of warnings or anything come forward, yeah. I think the general thing is with this, yeah, is I think that most people in government are fully aware of how this subject is viewed. They're aware that some people.
I think, Dave, most people in government, I think, aren't aware of whether it's night or day. I think the awareness of the government has been shown to be, shall we say, implausibly unaware of just about anything.
That's correct. But what I wanted to say, yeah, is that they are aware when it comes to the UFO subject, they're aware that there are a number of people that fully believe that it's real. Yeah. They are aware that there are debunkers and skeptics out there, and they are aware that there's a vast majority of the population, even today, yeah, that are very, very fence city regarding it.
I would say, Dave, we're not dealing with debunkers. We're dealing with active security, GCHQ, MOD, active programs to make sure that things don't happen. Yeah, it's not a case of a couple of people mildly disagreeing.
Yeah, as I said, it's been very tight-lipped across here. They haven't really released any statements. The MOD have not released any real statements of any significance regarding what's been going on since 2017. But as I said earlier on, it's unrealistic to think this is all going on stateside and there's nothing going on around the UK. I was
poking fun at Nick Pope. I have to say Nick Pope was actually quite critical of the British UFO scene, and was actually saying that there were some cases which were very, very interesting. I think one of the cases he was referring to was relatively recent, with fighters involving a pyramid-type UFO in South Wales. I think that was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe more. But, I mean, to give credit to Nick, he was actually sort of pushing why don't we have more of this research? So that's what you're doing. So maybe may the wind be in your sails.
Yeah, we're just seeing where this goes. And I think the more information that's out there and is on record, whether it be censored for names or whatever, you know, obviously there may be some retired staff or whatever who decide to give their names and maybe they can go out. Like the little Rissenden case, we've got the individual is now deceased, but we've got those. And he went to the news and that sort of thing about it over the years, but that's absolutely not a given. If people want to keep all their information back, we will remove from that information whatever is necessary to make sure that their identity does not go out. It's more about what's happened and where. And I do realize, that sometimes that, you know, if people go digging, they might be able to kind of work it out and they work out who it was in that area at that sort of time. So this is the sort of level we have to go to with it. We will only put out what the individual is happy to disclose. And you have my absolute word on that. And anybody who knows the research I've done over the last 16 years is fully aware that I treat that with respect, whether it comes from an everyday civilian or somebody with a military background or whatever.
Well, we had a very important case with the late Pete Wiltshire. Not Wiltshire, but Wiltshire. And he was an extremely good steel guitar player, sliding the guitar player, and he did an awful lot of stuff at US bases. And on a major US base, I think it was in west of London, he played the guitar so well during his break. The Americans couldn't believe that an English guy, some limey, could play the country music, the guitar so well.
Yes.
And they all sort of stood around him and talked with him, and it was all really, this is really top pilots and things and stuff. And he then asked, because he'd had so many UFO encounters in south of, it's not Southend, it's on the Thames.
Yes.
Essex. The Southend, I get the two, Southend on Sea or whatever. I think it's that. And a lot of personal cases and stuff down there. So that's one of the reasons we were talking to him. But he explained that what he did was he just said, well, what about these UFOs? He just asked an innocent question. At that, immediately, the whole atmosphere changed. All the pilots and the people that he were being matey with and wanted to buy him a drink and stuff just sort of immediately froze.
Yeah.
Then somebody came and took him by the arm and took him under, right across the base, going down into the underground facilities, and basically brought him to the base commander. And he was then given a pretty hostile and pretty aggressive interview, and under lights and conditions like that. What the hell are you doing that for, and all that. The base commander then sort of just stopped it. He explained it and stopped it, and he says, "Come, are you staying overnight at the base?" And he says, "Yeah, I've got another session to do shortly." And he was basically told, "Well, come and see me tomorrow morning at 9:30." So he was allowed to come and see the base commander at 9 o'clock, and the base commander handed him a whole bunch of color 10x8 photographs, and those were of huge, basically three types of craft. Big up-close photographic evidence without classifications on them. So these were in his drawer. They weren't out of a classified file. And there were three basic types: the nuts and bolts UFOs, the sort of plasma type sort of UFO things, which sort of are slightly here but not here, and organic biological types of huge craft. And he was able to look at these, and he was promised, don't tell anybody about this for 25 years. So that was a good 30 years ago. So that's and he's passed on now, and he did explain the kind of photographs that were shown, but these were big, in-your-face, color 10x8 photographs of huge, detailed UFOs. And when I interviewed Nick Pope, when he left he changed his current employment. He did slip up on one little thing, and he says, "Well, we certainly have been shooting at them with our gun cameras." Now that means they're physical, they're on radar, they're up close, and they have photographs. So all those years later, we have a story of them having those photographs. Would you encourage people to, within the aviation industry, to maybe, those are unclassified photographs, would you encourage them to sort of maybe pass them your way?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that anybody's kind of willing to, to disclose as part of that, whether it be kind of radar data or photographs or anything like that, can always help. It can always help, because the testimony can only get you so far. If there's other types of evidence that also join in, that's what makes a stunning.
Well, how do people contact you? How does somebody who's just seen a whole fleet of alien Dogon destructor craft coming to disturb somebody in a dressing gown somewhere in the south of England? We're talking about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy here. A bit of humour there. How do they get hold of you, and how would they sort of meet you if they have something important to say or something like that?
So
I mean, would they talk to you or who?
While we're talking about the new website, they would go to the website. On that, in the admin section, is phone numbers and emails for all of us. They can contact me personally. Obviously, I accept cases from anywhere, not just aviation staff. And that's the details for that can be found on the Birmingham UFO Group website, which is bufog.com, bufog.com. My phone number and email are also on there. So they can pick and choose.
If you're talking aviation people, would they want to go to a nut job UFO website? I'm sorry to be really blunt on this. I mean,
no, probably not, which is why we've made the new site.
Would there be a different pathway, different way of contact?
Well, there's my phone number and my email address, so I can.
Yeah, but where would they find that?
either on the Bufog website. For me personally,
Yeah, but they're
on
not
this-
going to be looking for that website.
Okay,
How would they
so
find that as an aviation pilot who's not into the UFO thing?
that's kind of why we're trying to spread the information on the creation of this new site as far and wide as possible. Like, we could put our details elsewhere, yeah, on some other non-UFO related thing, but it has no bearing on why they'd be getting in touch
Well,
with
I'm
us.
just thinking it from a raw point of view. I'm a pilot. I've just flown, and
well,
I'm not
we'd
into
like-
UFOs.
yeah.
So
we'd like to hope that somebody would have said to them, "Oh, did you
No, but
realize
how are they going to know this? This is the opportunity. They're not into UFOs. They're not into the genre, but they want to report it. I'm being hard on you here, Dave, for God's sake.
The only way they're going to find out my personal details is
No, but
either
they're not
knowingly-
looking. No, but they're not looking for you. They're looking to report their sighting. Where would they go to? The first thing is going to maybe talk to the police, not talking to the aviation people. How are they going to know? How is your information going to get into the aviation industry's sphere of knowledge base as who to report to?
They have probably been told not to report to anybody when they've had these incidents.
Well, assuming that they're looking to talk to, I mean, how are they going to do this? I mean, this is the point about getting out of the little bubble of the UFO community.
Well, you've got to be in the bubble to enable.
But they're not going to be in the bubble because
No. What
pilots.
I mean is, if they want to talk about a sighting that they've had of a UFO, they will obviously search for relevant locations online for.
Well,
where
how are they
can...
going to find that? That's what I'm
well,
saying.
I'd like to hope that after a short amount of time, if they type in pilots and UFO, up will come.
Well,
the
this
brand
is
new
the
website.
important thing. How are they going to find that? You've got to get that in the search
Google,
engines.
It will go into the search engines because it's a website on Google. So after a while, it will just be there.
Well, there are
Google.
people in the States who are at the FAA have done stuff like that. I mean, would you want them to contact the Civil Aviation Authority or have contacts with that?
That won't ever come our way and won't ever add
Well, how are they
anything
going to
to
get
what we're trying to do with the site.
Dave? I'm going to pressurize you on this.
They will search in Google and they will type in pilot and UFO and hopefully up will come the new site. So in the same way that if let's say somebody was thinking, oh, I wonder if anybody around the West Midlands or Birmingham or whatever is looking into the subject. If you type in Birmingham UFO, up will come Bufog on Google.
No, but they're not going to know that, Dave. That's the point.
No, but they'd be if
Because
they're interested.
Pilots are busy flying airplanes.
Yeah, but if they're interested in talking about, they're going to be fully aware that that UFOs are called UFOs, yeah? So, pretty much everybody out there, whatever their background, has heard the term UFO. They might not have heard UAP, but certainly heard UFO. So we'd like to hope that after a while, we're putting in searches like that, looking for things on Google.
I think you need to get that sorted, Dave. I don't think you've really fully understood from a completely external environment what are they going to think about. Oh, I'm going to phone up Dave Hodrien.
No. Through the web, they're going to go through the website.
No, will they?
This isn't about me. This is about the website launch. I'm just one of the 4 researchers.
Yes, but I think that needs to be addressed. The aviation industry, you've got to be in the aviation industry.
Yep.
Contact.
So we've already.
There's the third. I think it's the 4th year of the Spacecom is at Farnborough coming up in March. Surely you should think about thinking of being there.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we're trying to get word of the website's creation out however we can. So we've already
there are stands there that you can hire. The British Astronomical Society.
And maybe we'll do that. We haven't decided on that yet.
Yeah, well, I think the Spacecom is a big deal. We were there with Julie Phelps, and we actually managed to talk to the Air Commodore in charge of the whole Spacecom.
Yes,
that's a big
so that might be a way of absolutely that might be a way of reaching
well
people.
I suggest you think about that. It may involve spending money, of course, and wearing a tie.
We've been, myself and the other admins of the website have spent vast amounts of money on.
No, well, I'm talking about Spacecom. It's where the general public can interface with the space industry and aviation industry at Farnborough. I think you should look that up.
Yeah. So if there are any aviation staff there, that's the
thing. I think you should knock on the door.
Might be an opportunity to reach them. We've also been reaching out to aviation industry within the UK, various magazines, that sort of thing. Yeah. And in due course, we may run adverts and that sort of thing, wider. It all depends on how this takes off. This is only just launched, so early days.
Is that a pun, Dave? Give you a hard time.
Unintentional pun.
Well, the best puns are unintentional. Well, thank you very much, and just remember Stonehenge. And
Yep.
I'm offering, I'm going to
place.
be doing some tours called Too Hot to Handle around certain bases where I'm very frustrated that a lot of the British key researchers in places in England have been completely sidelined by the American narrative. So on some levels, we're sort of battling with the same bat on that. So in the meantime, next exciting episode is whatever, same time, same channel. How's the video game going? How's your game going? Just before we go.
The card game.
Game.
So yeah, it was sold on Amazon for a period of time. I've had to remove it from Amazon now. They kind of have a shelf life on that for a while. So it's now going to be sold through private sales directly through the Birmingham UFO Group website. It was my midlife crisis or an experiment, and it was great fun putting the game together. And I'm very, very proud of what.
Well, that's a big project, and it's a project which gets you experienced in different things, marketing and all that sort of stuff. And it's worthwhile doing it. I think you've done a great job, and it's a good learning curve.
Yeah, I never did it as a money-making exercise. It was just done.
Well, you've got to make money to pay the bills.
Well, true, but I've got my day job for that. But
I know.
All I wanted to do with it was make the most accurate game themed on the real subject instead of kind of laser guns and usual alien invasion nonsense. But actual what's actually going on with the subject. And we've obviously talked about this before, Miles. But as you know, there's many elements within the game that are covered that are based on real contact experiences and real things that are actually
I hope you're able to give it another go. It's a big deal launching books and launching things like that.
It's still available via BooFog now, so if anybody's interested in that, go and check it out.
Okay, well, we'll call that quits. I've got red lights flashing like hell here. I've put this drive didn't want to work suddenly.